I had a lot of fun with that debate, actually. I think, oh man, it's the most direct confrontation I've had with one of this like fake logic, like oh haha, via analysis I have determined pushes up glasses that it's illogical to be trans kind of deals. The thing is like people, oh man, people don't understand like the way these things work with regards to like the word cool, Nobody has an all-encompassing, all-describing definition of the word cool. That is not a real thing. Any attempt to fully explain the definition of the word cool will be torn apart. Definitions of words change in context. They change in different areas. There's so much there. I've always been frustrated by these like quote unquote logic debates because I don't believe they're about logic. I think that they just morally don't like trans people. I'll never be moved off this position because I feel like she was making every possible effort to not understand how the standards she was applying to trans people fall apart when applied to literally any other social category. Like defining what it means to be American or chair or this or that or whatever. Like it will never work because definitions are only meant to serve as a guideline. They're only meant to give you an understanding of a term so that you can work with it. They can't give you the full rich texture of a term in so many cases because that's just not how language works, especially since so much of it is contextual. There's no way. You could fill a book the size of the dictionary on the definition of the word cool and you still wouldn't have an answer by the end. You would just have a really rich understanding of the subject. Yeah, anyway, like with the American thing, that didn't pan out. We didn't really talk about chair that much with cool. I thought it was really telling where I was asking about horror, right? Where she was like, if a person says I feel like a man, it's like, well, what essential quality do all men share? Which is a ridiculous thing to say. Like nobody says I feel like X or I feel like NX. And then it's like, oh, well, what they're saying is that there's a single common characteristic shared by every single member of that. Like, no, that's not true. That's not real. But like, I don't know, she like pretended that it was. Like, if you really wanted to get into stuff like scientific epistemology, you understand that even the scientific method isn't an objective phenomena. We have arbitrary social standards that we use to determine the acceptability of like the scientific method, right? The repeatability of surveys and studies, all that crap. Like, at the end of it, all of it is stuff we've built to make our lives easier. And then I kept talking about how like being a man or identifying as a man isn't about identifying with the traits. It's about identifying with the term man, the concept, the orbit, the lens. And like it kept being like, well, then this is contradictory. And it's not, it's a fake aesthetic of logic, that's used in lieu of the actual moral arguments. She was clearly hiding her power level. Yeah, probably, I see the kind of person often in STEM. Well, again, I can't believe how right I was, as always, but the term here is scientific positivism. Positivism is a philosophical school that holds all genuine knowledge is either true by definition or positive, meaning a posteriori facts derived by reason and logic from sensory experience. Other ways of knowing, such as intuition, introspection, or religious faith, are rejected or considered meaningless. So, like, this is literally like Reddit philosophy. It's like, dude, bro, what if we had a belief system where, like, the only things that are true are things that are, like, evidence true, like you could prove them, like evidence, like science, man. What if all things were just like science and everything else is bullshit? Now, obviously, like, I agree with science and the scientific method. However, when in application, this leads to some really bad philosophy, like really bad philosophy. And the reason for that, of course, is because positivism can be nice when you're talking about, stuff like mathematics, even though positivists tend not to be fully understanding of what exactly is an a posteriori fact, as opposed to what is like deduced from it. But when you get into other stuff, like anything involving social analysis, things get really dumb really, really quick. It seems really susceptible to bias. As is often the case with people who enjoy adopting the cloak of reason, they will often use reason as a way of making their biases contagious. They will use the aesthetic of science to legitimize biases they have. This is, after all, what we saw in scientific racism, right? Racism, as we understood it, was largely a product of the transatlantic slave trade, and all the white slave owners and all the rich people around them were like, well, clearly we're on top of all the black people because, like, we're rich and they're slaves and we have big petticoats and they don't. So, like, there should be some kind of, like, science thing that makes it, like, scientifically we're better, right? We've got to have some kind of science thing that makes us science better than science black people. So then they, facial studies, skull studies, there were all those things that like you can determine who is or isn't a criminal based on people's phrenology, like that kind of shit. And then it's all bullshit. But the people who made it up often believed in it, right? Like they weren't just making it up because they were stupid. They already presupposed the validity of their bias against black people and felt that they were just trying to coax out the underlying scientific truth. You know what I mean? They had assumed they were already right for a scientific reason and were just looking post hoc to justify it. And I feel like that's kind of what this was, because her standards for analyzing the validity of any like sociological claim or like definition would not hold up for any other word. Like they wouldn't hold up anywhere. Like, remember when she tried to posit that like there was no such thing as a Muslim atheist, or that like a person can't be a Christian unless they believe in the Holy Trinity? Dude, there are entire denominations of Christianity that don't believe in the Holy Trinity. But like she just so casually established like a concrete barrier with like no thought on like, wait, hold on, because that's the bias thing. In her mind, she thinks of a Christian as X. So like that's the off to like that's it for her, right? Like so that is where the line is. Anyway, I did enjoy the conversation because I did have fun having it. The part where she was trying to apply mathematical definitions of social constructs drove me crazy. Yeah, like it's logically contradictory to employ any kind of allegory or metaphor or like any term with a broader internally contradictory set of beliefs. Like, here's a question that I guess I should have asked her, right? Okay, so masculinity can say that it's masculine to do contradictory things. Like, it can be masculine to leave your home and be a wanderer, and it can be masculine to stay at home and take care of your family. Do you think that a person believing in masculinity, like there is a logical contradiction, or do you believe the concept itself is contradictory, fluid, amorphous, and subject to like definitional changes? I think she would conflate those two. I think in her mind, anything that requires like any thought to parse is like logically contradictory. She pulled a face every time whores, femboys, or porn came up. She seemed, oh, I got like major social conservative vibes from her for sure. Criticism. Historically, positivism has been criticized for its reductionism, i.e. for contending all processes are reducible to physiological, physical, or chemical elements. Wilhelm Dilthey fought strenuously against the assumption that only explanations derived from science are valid. He reprised Vico's argument that scientific explanations do not reach the inner nature of phenomena, and it is humanistic knowledge that gives us insight into thoughts, feelings, and desires. Yeah, that's true. That's pretty true. All right. If she really is just very socially conservative and is legitimately arriving at like scientific positivism as a way to justify those biases, then she would actually be doing the exact same thing that those scientific racists did, right? She would be a person who holds a bias, and because she doesn't like a thing, she thinks, oh, that thing is wrong, like fundamentally wrong, and I'm smart, so it must be scientifically wrong, and it's my responsibility to prove that it's scientifically wrong, when in reality, they're just like trying to outwardly legitimize the biases they already had. All definitions are circular based on shared experience, and our experience is shaped by language, its evolution together. Yeah, the like circularity argument for definitions and for terms is so fucking stupid. It literally does not mean anything. The moment you hear the circular definition argument, like then you can just stop. Like this person does not know anything about linguistics, like absolutely nothing. The most that you could do with stuff like that is argue that a definition isn't useful or not, like doesn't convey meaning that well. But there's so much like in our language that just does not, like that just does not follow those rules. Yeah, like what is blue? You could argue that blue represents like a visual wavelength or spectrum within a given like set of fucking parameters or whatever. But first of all, those are subjective and human. Different animals do not see blue the way we see blue. You know, that's like a totally subjective neurological experience, the actual color blue from a certain wavelength of light. And for two, like where are the boundaries? Different languages and different cultures have different boundaries for what is or isn't blue. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, what is love? They even made a song about that.